Hey friends, the final Warhammer Commander pre-constructed deck, Forces of the Imperium, has just been revealed, so it's time to do a full deck analysis and go through all the brand new cards that you're going to find in the deck. But before we begin, two quick reminders. First, if you want to get your hands on these sweet new Warhammer Commander decks, you can head on over to our sponsor, cardkingdom.com/mtggoldfish, and be sure to ask for a scoop sticker in the order notes. And number two, if you like this sort of content, be sure to like and subscribe so you'll always be reminded when a new preview video comes out or other Commander content comes out on the channel. Alright, let's dive into the deck, Forces of the Imperium, starting with the face commander of the deck, Inquisitor Greyfax. So Inquisitor Greyfax kind of tells you what this deck is all about. It's an Esper deck, it's white, blue, and black, and it illustrates the deck's main theme, which is tokens. So, Inquisitor Greyfax is a 4-mana Esper commander, a 3/3 legendary creature, human inquisitor, with vigilance and 2 abilities. Unquestionable Wisdom says other creatures you control have +1/+0 and have vigilance, so it's a great anthem for a go-wide style deck. It just gets more and more value the more creatures you have on the battlefield. And the second ability, Hunt for Heresy, says pay 1 and tap to tap target creature an opponent controls and investigate. So this can be used offensively to get rid of potential blockers or defensively to get rid of potential attackers, and you're creating tokens, which again is a main theme of the deck. Now, this commander isn't super explosive or anything. The anthem is quite good, especially mid to late game, once you've assembled a large army of tokens, and being able to constantly get rid of potential blockers and attackers while making tokens is really nice, but it is incremental advantage here. It's not a crazy powerful commander or anything, but it gets the job done, and it's not going to draw too much hate in the process. However, the secondary commander in the deck that you can easily swap as the commander of the Precon deck is much more scary. This is Marneus Calgar. It's a 5-mana, 3/5 legendary creature, Astartes Warrior, with double strike and 2 abilities. Master Tactician says whenever 1 or more tokens enter the battlefield under your control, draw a card. And Chapter Master, pay 6 mana to create 2/2/2 white Astartes Warrior creature tokens with vigilance. So this goes ham on the tokens theme and also on the go wide theme. But the first part of the ability here, Master Tactician, being able to draw cards whenever 1 or more tokens enter the battlefield, is so powerful. It's not crazy powerful in the pre-constructed deck, but keep in mind there are a lot of very efficient token generators in Commander as a whole in Esper colors. I'm thinking Smothering Tithe, for example. Whenever an opponent draws a card, you create a treasure token. Anything that can make a lot of tokens one at a time will draw you a ton of cards in Marneus Calgar. So you're going to be drawing a decent amount of cards, and it's a double striker, which is great both on the offense and on the defense, and it's a great mana sink later on in the game as you're just pooping out a lot of tokens whenever you have excess mana to spare. So all those things are really, really good in grinding out the deck, and I would think Marneus might even be better than the face commander in the stock list. But out of the two, Marneus definitely has a ton of potential outside of the pre-constructed deck and is going to be a very scary Esper commander that you're going to be probably facing outside of pre-constructed decks in general. Moving on though, we have 3 other legendaries in the deck that cannot be the commander of the pre-constructed deck because they're not Esper colors. They're either 2 colors or 1 color, but nonetheless, they are very interesting cards. The first one is Commissar Severina Raine. It's a 3-mana Orzhov 2/2 legendary creature, human soldier, 2 abilities here. Leading from the front, whenever it attacks, each opponent loses X life, or X is the number of other attacking creatures. And Summary Execution. Pay 2 mana, sacrifice another creature, you gain 2 life, and draw a card. So this obviously plays upon the go-wide tokens theme. You want to have a lot of creatures on the battlefield, and then the Commissar is going to get in there and make opponents lose a bunch of life, and that's probably going to be the reach you need to close out games. Obviously, she is a 2/2, so odds are she's not going to be surviving the attack, but you don't really need to because you still get that attack trigger immediately. And then if you're not ready to kill the table, you can always just sacrifice creatures and draw more cards, gain more life, and stabilize that way as well. So this is a fantastic mid to late value engine in the deck. Moving on, we have Belisarius Cawl. This is a 4-mana Azorius 2/4 legendary artifact creature human with 2 abilities. First ability is Ultima Founding. Tap and tap 2 untapped artifacts you control. Create a 2/2 white Astartes warrior creature token with Vigilance and Master of Machines. You can tap and tap X untapped creatures you control. To look at the top X cards of your library, you may reveal an artifact card from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Now, this commander cares specifically about artifacts, which is kind of a sub-theme of the pre-constructed deck, but is not a main focus like just tokens in general, specifically like creature tokens, I would say, in this deck. So, Cawl is not going to be super fantastic in the pre-constructed deck. It might have more value outside of it, but either way, it's going to be overshadowed by other Artifact Matters commanders for sure. Moving on, we have Inquisitor Eisenhorn. This is a 4-mana Dimir 2/3 legendary creature, human Inquisitor, and has 2 abilities. First, you may reveal the first card you draw each turn as you draw it. Whenever you reveal an instant or sorcery card this way, create Cherubale, a legendary 4/4 black demon creature token with flying, and whenever it deals combat damage to a player, investigate that many times. So the first ability is great, it just adds another body to the battlefield and replenishes it every once in a while, but the second ability is going to be especially sweet here. You get to investigate that many times. So you can only deal 2 damage with Inquisitor by itself, but if you have any ways of pumping up Eisenhorn, and there are a couple in the deck, there's such as the Anthem effect from the first Inquisitor, Greyfax, you can investigate even more times. That means more tokens, and that means more value in the pre-constructed deck. Next up, we've got Neyam Shai Murad. This is a 4-mana Orzhov 3/3 legendary creature human rogue with Rogue Trader. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you may have that player return target permanent card from their graveyard to their hand. If you do, that player chooses a permanent card in your graveyard, then you put it onto the battlefield under your control. So this is kind of a political group huggy type card. It's going to help your opponents, sure, because you're going to return a card from their graveyard to their hand. However, you get more value out of it because you're not putting it to your hand, you're putting it onto the battlefield. So this is not only recursion for you, but it's also a mana accelerant for you in a way, mana advantage for you, because you don't have to spend the mana to recast that permanent as well. So this can generate allies on the battlefield, allies at your table, and it can be used politically to great effect. And I think this card is very powerful and interesting in a multiplayer game for sure. Moving on, though, we have a very cool callback to an old mechanic, Sister Repentia. This is a 5-mana Orzhov 5/1 human warrior with Martyrdom. When it dies, you gain 2 life and draw 2 cards, and it has Miracle for just white and a black. So you can either pay 5 mana to cast Sister Repentia, or if it's the first card you draw on your turn, on a turn rather, you can just pay 2 mana. And that death trigger is very nice. If you have ways of, let's say, skull clamping this 1 toughness creature, you can draw 4 cards and gain 2 life. The fact that it dies super easily and has 5 power, so it can trade very easily too, makes it incredibly tantalizing, especially if you have any ways of killing it and recurring it very easily. It could be a fantastic draw engine that also keeps your life total very nice and high. I'm thinking the newer Teza that doubles death triggers can be a great home for this card. But yeah, this is just a great value engine in general, I think. Moving on, though, we have Celestine, the Living Saint. This is a 5-mana mono white 3/4 legendary creature human warrior with flying, lifelink, and healing tears. At the beginning of your end step, return target creature card with mana value X or less from your graveyard to the battlefield, where X is the amount of life you gain this turn. Now, this card is actually a fantastic payoff for life gain effects. By herself, she has flying and lifelink, so she can get in there pretty easily, deal 3 damage, gaining 3 life, and then at your end step, you can return something with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard directly to the battlefield. So again, this is not just recursion, but it's also mana advantage. And then if you pair that with the other ways that this deck can generate life gain, and we've already looked at a few different ways of gaining life, like the sister we just looked at previously, you can get back even larger creatures from the graveyard too. I think this card has a ton of potential outside of the pre-constructed deck as well. This is like an easy staple in a lot of life gain decks because you'll be gaining a lot of life and then you'll just be getting giant creatures from your graveyard directly onto the battlefield. So Celestine looks fantastic and a staple for life gain decks. Moving on, though, we have another legendary card, but this one is an artifact, and this one is super cool. This is the Golden Throne. This is a 4-mana legendary artifact with 2 abilities. The first ability, Arcane Life Support. If you would lose the game, instead exile the Golden Throne, and your life total becomes 1, and 1,000 souls die every day. You can tap it and sacrifice a creature at 3 mana in any combination of colors. So this does 2 things. First, it makes sure that you're harder to kill. Obviously, it leaves you out 1 life total, so you're not super out of the woods or anything. You're still left in a fragile set, but that's really nice to have, especially against like combo decks that try to win the game. That will prevent that and keep you at 1 life instead. But the really cool thing is, even if you ignored that first ability, the second ability is super gas. It's a repeatable sack engine that costs 0 mana to activate. It does require tapping, so you can only do it once per turn cycle unless you have ways of untapping it. But sacrifice a creature, add 3 mana in any combination of colors is like a super souped up Phyrexian tower effect. And it's going to be fantastic in aristocrat style decks. It's ramping out your bigger threats. It's being a sack engine at the same time, and the fact that it can also serve as a way of preventing your opponents from winning so easily is fantastic. This card is super sweet. Moving on, though, we have another Aristocrats payoff card. This is Sanguinary Priest. It's a 4-mana black 2/4 creature Astartes cleric with lifelink and Blood Chalice. Whenever another creature you control dies, Sanguinary Priest deals 1 damage to any target. So this is kind of like a Blood Artist effect, but more of an aggressive version of it. So whenever another creature you control dies, instead of just draining your opponents like a Zulaport Cutthroat rather, you get to instead deal 1 damage to any target. And also keep in mind that this creature has lifelink, so not only are you dealing 1 damage to any target, but you're also gaining life in the process. So it's like a souped up life drain effect because you can take out creatures or planeswalkers with this ability too. And I think that makes it worth the 2 additional mana. Like a Zulaport Cutthroat effect is 2 mana, and it's much more efficient at draining your opponents. This is 4 mana, but it can take out opposing creatures too. So this has a ton of value in aristocrat decks. It might make the cut in other aristocrat decks, not even just in this precon itself. Moving on, though, we have a keyword that is unique to this deck. It's Squan. And this is on Vanguard Suppressor. It's a 4-mana blue 3/2 creature, Astartes warrior with Squad 2. As an additional cost to cast a spell, you may pay 2 any number of times. When this creature enters the battlefield, create that many tokens that are copies of it. So it's literally kicker, but a very specific type of kicker. Whenever you pay 2, you get to make copies of this card, which is really powerful and really sweet. It has flying and suppressing fire. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. So it's flying, it draws cards each time it's dealing combat damage, and if you have additional mana, you can make copies of this. You can make a legion of these, and these are all tokens, so they work very well with the theme of tokens on this deck. It's just a great card that is good at 4 mana, and the fact that it scales up throughout the game if you have more mana to sink into it makes it fantastic. Like late game, this is the type of card you exactly want to top deck, because then you can make a squadron of them, draw a bunch of extra cards, deal a lot of pressure in the air at the same time, and then get back in the game that way. So yeah, this card's gas. I love it. Moving on, though, we have And They Shall Know No Fear. This is a white 2-mana instant. Choose a creature type. Creatures you control of the chosen type get +1/+0 and gain indestructible until end of turn. So in this pre-constructed deck, we got humans, we have Astartes, we have soldiers, and we have warriors. So it's not always going to save all of your army, because you have some mix of Astartes and humans on the battlefield. So sometimes you just won't be able to save everything at once, but it's going to save a large chunk of your army. It's definitely going to save the most important cards. It's a mana efficient rate. It obviously doesn't compare as well to like Heroic Intervention in green, but for the sake of the pre-constructed deck and for tribal decks, it is a solid way of protecting your board from a board wipe or some sort of removal spell. or just makes a combat trade into a one-sided affair. It's a good card. Moving on, we have Defenders of Humanity. This is X 2 and a white for an enchantment that says when it enters the battlefield, create X 2/2 white Astartes warrior creature tokens with vigilance. Then you can also pay X 2 and a white and exile this enchantment to create X 2/2 white Astartes warrior creature tokens with vigilance. Activate only if you control no creatures and only during your turn. So, mid to late game, this is the type of card that will just refill your board with creature tokens. Mid to late game, you can dump, 5 mana into this, 8 mana total, to make 5 Astartes creature tokens. Then if stuff goes against your way, somebody wipes the board or something, then you can just dump all your mana into it again and refill your board of creature tokens, which is exactly what the deck wants to do. So this is a great way not just to field the board with a lot of creatures, but then recover from a board wipe very swiftly. So yeah, this is a nice card for the mid to late game. Moving on, we have a very fancy board wipe. This is Exterminatus. This is a 7-mana Orzhov sorcery that says non-land permanents your opponents control lose indestructible until end of turn, then destroy all non-land permanents. So it doesn't remove the indestructibility from your own creatures. Your own creatures can be indestructible, but if your opponents have indestructible stuff, maybe they have an Avacyn on the battlefield protecting their board, Exterminatus is going to make sure that all the permanents are going to die. Not your indestructible permanents, those can stay, but everything else is going to die. So yeah, this is a nice way of just really clearing that board and making sure that everything your opponents die, unless they phase out with Teferi's Protection, then you got, what can I say? So each of the pre-constructed decks comes with a saga, and the one in the Imperium precon comes with the fitting Birth of the Imperium. This is a 5-mana Esper saga that has 3 chapters. The first chapter creates a 2/2 white Astartes warrior creature token with vigilance for each opponent you have. So if it's a typical 4-player game, 3 opponents, you're going to make 3 tokens off this. Then chapter 2, each opponent sacrifices a creature. Then finally, chapter 3, draw 2 cards for each opponent who controls fewer creatures than you. So overall, this is going to do basically 3 things. First, it's going to make you 3 tokens. Then it's going to make your opponents all lose 1 creature. So you're going to be netting 3 creatures through that as well. So you're going to be up basically 6 creatures by the time the second chapter resolves. And then finally, chapter 3, you're going to be drawing up to 6 cards. 2 for each opponent who controls fewer creatures than you. That's obviously when everything's working perfectly. Chapter 1 will make less tokens if you have less opponents alive. Chapter 2 will just make your opponents sacrifice less things if they don't have creatures to sacrifice, or if they have like a go wide deck, such as the Necron deck or something. They'll just have like a 2/2 token to sacrifice, and it's whatever. And then chapter 3 can draw you up to 6 cards in a 4-player game, but it can draw less as well. But I think this is pretty reliable because each chapter works well into each other so well. I think very often you're going to play this 5-mana saga, and you're going to create 3 tokens, and you're going to make your opponents lose 3 things that they didn't want to lose. And then finally, you're going to draw 6 cards. And the last chapter is what really sells it for me. Drawing 6 cards, even if you have to wait 3 turns for it, is really good. And while the saga is slow, like all sagas are, the value here is undeniable. I think this is probably the strongest overall saga out of all 4 of the precons, and I think it's worthy of playing outside of the precon as well. Moving on, though, we have a weird one. This is Arco-Flagellant. This is a black 3-mana, 3/1 creature human with Squad 2. It can't block, and it has Endurant. Pay 3 life, and it gains Indestructible until end of turn. So this means you can pay 3 life to make it survive your own Exterminatus, which is very sweet. It has Squad 2, so it's scaling threat as well. Overall, I don't think this card is incredible. I think the fact that it only has 3 power is going to be the biggest drawback. Just because once your opponents have a creature of toughness 4 or greater, this does very little on the battlefield. It can't block. Makes it not great. I don't know. I'm not sold on this one. Moving on, though, we got Assault Intercessor. This is a 3-mana Orzhov 3/2 creature Astartes warrior, First Strike, Menace, and Chainsword. Whenever a creature an opponent dies, that player loses 2 life. So typically when we have these type of effects, it's like a 2-mana creature. It doesn't really have good stats in terms of combat, and it pings our opponents for 1. But this one actually pings your opponents for 2, which is pretty nice. And it has First Strike, and it has Menace, and it has 3 power. So yeah, it costs a little bit more for this effect, but it also comes with a solid body, and it makes your opponents lose more life as well. It's kind of like the effect from what's it called, a Massacre Worm, for example. So it's an overall pretty nice card to have on the battlefield. It gives you some nice reach as a solid blocker. It can sometimes get in there as well. Not bad. Not amazing, but not bad. Next up, though, we got Callidus Assassin. This is a 6-mana Dimir 3/3 creature human shapeshifter assassin with flash and polymorphine. You may have Callidus Assassin enter the battlefield tapped as a copy of any creature on the battlefield, except it has, when this creature enters the battlefield, destroy up to 1 other target creature with the same name as this creature. So it enters the battlefield. This is a 6-mana flash creature, enters the battlefield as a copy of something you want to kill, and then you blow that up and it becomes a copy of that creature. So sometimes, your opponents have a cool ETB trigger or something, and it has like an Eternal Witness. You blow it up, but you're really using it just because you want to get that into the battlefield trigger on your own side. Or sometimes your opponents have a really scary thing. Maybe they have a scary commander, for example, that you want dead. You get to kill it, and you get to make a copy of that scary threat for yourself. The 2-for-1 effect here is really, really nice, and it's worth that 6 mana because it has flash too. The fact that you can do this at instant speed and really blow out your opponents is really tantalizing here. Yeah, it costs 6 mana. It's on the very expensive side. You don't have that many slots, 6 mana slots in a given deck, so those slots are precious. There's a lot of competition for them, but I think this is worthy of a 6-drop. Yeah, and it's definitely going to be a fantastic card in the pre-constructed deck as well. Next up, we have For the Emperor. This is a 4-mana white sorcery that says creatures you control get +2/+2 and gain vigilance and lifelink until end of turn. So this is a nice finisher ability. This deck is all about going wide, so that +2/+2 is going to get a lot of value in this deck. And not only can you use it as a finisher ability, but more often I imagine you're going to just be using it to just do a huge life swing. You can attack with your creatures. They have vigilance, so you don't have to worry about a crackback or anything, not having blockers that way. And the lifelink is going to be huge. We've seen a lot of token generators that make like 2/2s or whatever, so you're going to be swinging with a bunch of 4/4s at the minimum, and they're all going to have lifelink, and you're probably going to gain, 20 or more life off this ability, while chunking down your opponents as well, and you're also going to have all those creatures as blockers as well. And there is a bit of a life gain theme as well. We've seen Celestine care about the amount of life you're going to be gaining, so this works very well with it. Outside of the context of the precon, obviously we have way better anthems than this effect. Like a Chroma's Will just blows us out of the water. It's not really a contact. But for the sake of this deck, it's going to be a fantastic way of just getting in there safely and also saving your life total in the process. So I think this card is fantastic in this deck. Moving on, we have Grey Knight Paragon. This is a 5-mana white 4/4 creature Astartes Knight with flash and Rites of Banishment. When it enters the battlefield, destroy target attacking creature. If that creature is a demon, exile it instead. So this works very well against the Chaos pre-constructed deck, especially because it removes it entirely from the game, which is great. It's flash, and it is a great ambush effect, right? Like, if your opponents are attacking with 2 creatures, for example, one is like a small creature, like a 2-something, you can ambush it, block that, and kill that with by blocking it, and you can kill like a big threat as well. They don't have to be attacking you as well either. You can just flash it in whenever somebody's being attacking and kill the biggest threat there. It's pretty good. I mean, it is 5 mana. You have to keep 5 mana up, but we have seen a lot of like flash effects and instants already in the deck, so I guess it's geared to having your mana up and passing usually. But outside of the context of this deck, it's probably just too expensive. I guess it works well flicker effects as well. Like if you ephemerate this and then repeatedly kill attacking creatures, that's pretty sweet. But overall, I don't know. Outside of this pre-constructed deck, you have better blink options or whatever. But yeah, it's pretty sweet here. Moving on, though, we have Primaris Eliminator. This is a 5-mana black, 3/2 creature Astartes Warrior, and it says whenever it enters the battlefield, choose one. Executioner round, destroy target creature, or Hyperfrag round. Creatures target player controls get -2/-2 until end of turn. So this Primaris is all about killing, which makes sense because it's the Eliminator. The flexibility here, basically, when I think enter the battlefield, destroy target creature, I'm thinking like Murderous Chupacabra, in black at least, which is 4 mana. This is 5 mana, so it costs a bit more, but the flexibility here is something fantastic. The second ability of creature target player controls get -2/-2 until end of turn is kind of like a mini Massacre Worm. So you're either getting a mini Massacre Worm effect, or you're getting a Chupacabra effect. And the flexibility of having both on the same card is fantastic. We've seen a lot of 2/2 token generators, not just in this deck, but also in like the Necron deck, for example. Even the Tyrannid deck makes small creatures as well. So the Hyperfrag round effect is going to be really clutch in a lot of games, especially when you're playing against other precons. And then if there's any serious target that needs to be eliminated, then you use the Executioner round on it. So this is a fantastic, versatile card. Moving on, we have Sicarian Infiltrator. This is a 3-mana blue 1/2 artifact creature human soldier with flash and squad 2, and it has Benediction of the Omnicia. When it enters the battlefield, you draw a card. So this card is okay. It's not really a good combat unit. Obviously, it's just a 1/2, so it's going to be a glorified flash chump blocker. You're basically using it to draw a card. It's great for blink shenanigans, and just if you have a lot of mana, you can just wait until it's the end step before your turn, spend all your mana to drop a squad of these, draw a bunch of cards, and you have a bunch of artifact creatures on the battlefield. And we did see a little bit of an artifact sub theme. We had the Zorius Commander that cares about them as well, so you can tap and actually draw it off his ability. It's all right. It's pretty good. So there are a lot of synergy potentials here. And the fact that we've seen a lot of these flash creatures too means that being able to just untap and just draw and pass your turn and keep your untapped mana is probably going to be the style of this deck going forward. It's kind of draw-go, but draw-go with a lot of creatures. Moving on, we have Sister Hospitaller. This is a 6-mana Orzhov 3/2 creature human cleric with Medicus Ministorum. When it enters the battlefield, return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. You gain life equal to its mana value. So this is 6 mana, reanimate a creature, and you gain life, which isn't like great for 6 mana, but keep in mind this is attached to a creature, and it's an enter the battlefield trigger, so this is just ripe for abuse when it comes to blink effects. If you have ways of blinking the sister, this card is serious gas. Otherwise, you probably have better options, but if you have ways to blink this, it's serious gas, and it's going to be fantastic in the precon deck because, again, it works with the life gain sub-theme, it's reanimation, so it puts not just a 3/2 on the battlefield, but also another big creature, your best creature from your graveyard, back onto the battlefield. This card is really good, at least in this deck, and outside of this deck, if you have a blink deck that is an Orzhov, this card is just silly good, like really strong, actually. Next, we have Sister of Silence. This is a 5-mana blue 3/3 creature human knight with flash, Psychic Abomination. When it enters the battlefield, counter target instant spell, sorcery spell, activate ability, or triggered ability. So again, we keep seeing a lot of instants, a lot of flash. So this is definitely going to be like a draw-go, creature-focused draw-go deck. So 5 mana is a lot to keep up in your typical deck, but in this pre-constructed deck, this is basically what it's made for. It's all about flash shenanigans, all about keeping up your mana. So it won't be too difficult to keep up 5 mana for this effect. And then, yeah, it's expensive, but it's very versatile. It can hit an instant, a sorcery, an activate ability, or a triggered ability. Generally speaking, if you didn't have a creature attached to it, I think the going rate for this is either 3 or 4 mana. I think there's a 3-mana spell that does this, like can counter all these things. It's both a stifle and a counter spell. This is the fact that it is attached to a 3/3 body with flash. It can ambush a small creature. It can attack by itself. You can sacrifice it for value in the deck, and also it's blinkable too. So if you can blink at instant speed, you get extra value out of it. That seems like a decent rate. 5's a lot of mana. I kind of wish it was 4. Maybe 4 would be a little bit too strong though, but 5 is a lot. But yeah, in this deck, it's draw go creatures. So yeah, it makes a lot of sense here. Moving on, we have Space Marine Devastator. This is a 4-mana white 3/3 creature Astartes Warrior with Squad 2 and Grav Cannon. When it enters the battlefield, destroy up to 1 target artifact or enchantment. Seems really good to me. Seems like a great blink target. Being able to destroy artifacts and enchantments is always going to be very viable in a commander game where basically every single card type is going to be played. And the fact that later on in the game, you can squad it up, make a bunch of tokens of it, put more 3/3s on the battlefield, blow up more stuff, is really gas. This card is really solid. Like, I would put it in a blink decks. Basically, this effect is a Reclamation Sage. That's a 2/1 elf, I think, for 3 mana in green. So you're paying 1 extra for a 3/3, so you're increasing its body, and you have the ability to squad up, make extra versions of it. I think that's definitely worth the extra mana for it. Yeah, this card is gas, not just in the precon, but I think it's also valuable outside of the precon as well. For example, Gyrid. I think Gyrid Conclave Exile is going to love this card because you make a token of this and then you can populate it with Gyrid and keep blowing up artifacts and enchantments. Oh my god, Gyrid's going to love this card. Oof, this is a fun one. Oof. All right, moving on though. We have Space Marine Scout. This is a 3-mana 2/1 creature Astartes Scout with First Strike and Vigilance and Concealed Position. When it enters the battlefield, if an opponent controls more lands than you, you may search your library for a Plains card, put it onto battlefield tap, then shuffle your library. So this card is a bad Knight of the White Orchid. Knight of the White Orchid is a 2/2 with First Strike for 2 mana. And it puts the Plains card onto the battlefield untapped. This one though, it has Vigilance. It costs 1 more mana. It has Vigilance, though. It also searches up a plane, but it puts it in the battlefield tapped. And that's basically the same thing. But you know what? Knight of the White Orchid's incredible. You don't really need to have another Knight of the White Orchid to make it playable. This card is perfectly fine. I think it's solid in the pre-constructed deck. Obviously, ramp is always nice. It's another ETB trigger, so if there's any way of blinking it, it's really nice. And then outside of the pre-constructed deck, I think it's not the worst. It's not the best, but it's not the worst. Next up, though, we have Thunderwolf Cavalry. This is a 5-mana white 4/4 creature Astartes Warrior with First Strike and Crushing Teeth. Whenever Thunderwolf Cavalry deals combat damage to a player, put a +1/+1 counter on each other creature you control. So pretty simple. It's a 4/4 with First Strike, so it's going to, do very well both defensively and offensively. And then whenever it's dealing combat damage, it's growing your team. And your team is go wide. It's all about squatting up. It's all about flooding the board with your Astartes warriors. So having any way of putting stuff on all your creatures, buffing all your creatures, is going to be really good. Is it amazing? No. It still has to do combat damage. It's just a 4/4, so if your opponents have bigger creatures, it's not going to do anything by itself. But you know what? It's solid. It's fine. Next, we have another miracle card. Ooh, I just like miracle cards. They're really cool. It's Triumph of Saint Catherine. And I love the miracle border. I like that. I like this card. I don't even know what it does yet, but I like it. It's a 5-mana white 5/5 creature human warrior with lifelink and Praesidium Protectiva. When it dies, exile it and the top 6 cards of your library in a face-down pile. If you do, shuffle that pile and put it back on top of your library, and it has Miracle too. So either you pay 5 mana for this 5/5 lifelink, or you pay 2 mana if it's the first card you drew on that turn. And when it dies, you get to shuffle it back somewhere in the top 6 cards of your library. So you will get to miracle it again and come back again and again. And guess what? A 5/5 is pretty big, even in Commander. The fact that it is lifelink means it's going to be gaining life, 5 life each time it's attacking or blocking. That's good. It's going to keep you alive in the game, and obviously life gain is a sub-theme in the deck, like I already mentioned. That's solid. So a 2-mana 5/5 lifelink half the time is going to be pretty good. Yeah, I like this. It's a cute card. Is it really strong? No, it's not a strong card. It's a fine card. It's good in the precon meta, obviously, but outside of it is not. But I don't know. I like the flavor of it. And I like that they brought back Miracle in a cool way. Thumbs up, Wizards of the Coast. This is just neat. It makes me happy. All right, moving on though. Ultramarines Honor Guard. It's a 4-mana white 2/2 creature Astartes warrior with squad 2, and other creatures you control get +1/+1. So this is just a nice Anthem effect. By itself, it's whatever, it's overcosted, of course. I think all the squad cards are going to be a little bit overcosted by themselves by 1 mana, I think. I think 1 mana is correct, actually, yeah. I think they're all overcosted by 1 mana, but they all have squad 2, and that's the trade-off. Like, they get a lot better because you can dump more mana into them and get extra value out of them and get a bunch of tokens. So yeah, it's a fair rate. It seems really solid. It's better mid to late game when you can dump even more mana into it, and then really pump your team. Like your go wide team. Each one of these that are entering the battlefield gets +1/+1, and then another one, and then another one, and before you know it, you have like a bunch of 6/6s on the battlefield that are swinging for lethal. So yeah, this card's gas. I like it. And I like the squad mechanic. It seems nice. You pay 1 extra up front for the card, I think, and then you get to have a way to dump all this mana into your squad. And they all work so well with Populate. They work so well with Populate. Oh, Gyrid is just swimming in upgrades. I love it. And Trostani. Don't forget Trostani. Trostani loves this too. Yeah, this is neat. I like it. Moving on, we have Vexilus Praetor. This is a 4-mana white 3/4 creature Custodes warrior with Flash, Vigilance, and Aegis of the Emperor. Commanders you control have protection from everything. I love that phrase, protection from everything. I think Progenitus was the first thing that had protection from anything, but that's just a cool phrase. It has Flash, so you can kind of bait removal spells off it as well. Like if somebody goes for targeted removal on your commander, you flash this in, boom, your commander survives and you got a targeted removal spell out of your opponent's hand. That's really cool. It also allows your commanders to sneak past enemy lines, any creatures, because they have protection from creatures as well. You can get around that. And you can ambush a smaller creature. It's a 3/4 with Flash, so you can just slam this down and eat an attacking creature as well. It's a nice card. It's solid. 4 mana is a lot to keep up in just a generic deck, but like I said a billion times, this is like a Flash deck, and that's really cool. So it's a draw go style, a Flash matters creature deck, and yeah, this is fun. I like this deck. I think this might be my favorite deck out of all of them. This one's my favorite. I like this one a lot. This is cool. A lot of tricks. It's very tricksy. All right, moving on. We got Zephyrim. This is a 4-mana white 3/3 creature human warrior, and it has a miracle. I love miracle. All right, it's squad 2, flying and vigilance, and miracle 2. So you can either cast this big old creature for 2 mana, or you can pay 4 mana instead. It's got squad either way, so good times all around. No powerful enter the battlefield thing or anything super crazy that you'd want to like populate in Trostani or Gyrid or whatever, but it's neat. I don't know. It's neat. It puts a bunch of 3/3 flying vigilance creatures on the battlefield. It scales really nicely. Thumbs up. I like I like them bringing back Miracle. What can I say? And I like Squad. Squad's cool. All right. Moving on. Thunderhawk Gunship. This is a 6-mana, 6/6 artifact vehicle with flying, and when it enters the battlefield, create 2/2 white Astartes warrior creature tokens with vigilance, and whenever it attacks, attacking creatures you control gain flying until end of turn, and has crew 2. 6 mana is a lot for anything in your deck, because again, there's not that many 6 mana slots available in a deck. So it has to do a lot, but in the context of this precon, it does enough, I think. It has a good ETB trigger. It puts 2 tokens on the battlefield. Only one of them is needed to crew the vehicle. It smacks people in the air for 6. But the most importantly, I think, is the fact that it gives your attacking creatures flying. Like, you have a bunch of 2/2s on the battlefield, 3/3s on the battlefield, 4/4s at most. Like, not all of these creatures are exceptionally large, so they're going to need Anthem effects to actually get damage through. And flying, giving them invasion, is a huge boon in the deck. A good way to get some damage through and finish the game. And I like the fact that these tokens, a lot of them have vigilance, and also Inquisitor Greyfax gives all your creatures vigilance too. So not only do you get to attack with your flying creatures, but they're vigilance too, so you don't have to worry about the crackback as much as well. It makes attacking into you a very scary thing, so you can safely attack without worrying about the crackback, and that's just really good. yeah, it's a solid card in this deck. I like this deck a lot. This deck is really sweet. All right, moving on. We have Redemptor Dreadnought. It's a 5-mana, 4/4 artifact creature, Astartes Dreadnought with Fallen Warrior. As an additional cost to cast a spell, you may exile a creature card from your graveyard and trample. And finally, it has Plasma Incinerator. Whenever it attacks, if a card is exiled with it, it gets +X until end of turn, where X is the power of the creature that has been exiled. So 5 mana, you have just a big beater. 5 mana, big beater of trample. It's not a very complicated card, but in the late game, you're going to need big beaters to close out the game, and this does it. Not very exciting to me. It doesn't have Miracle, or it doesn't have Squad, so I'm not like super excited, but whatever, it's cool, it's fine, it's whatever. Alright, moving on. Reaver Titan. It's a 7-mana, 10/10, artifact vehicle, 3 abilities, or well, one of them is just crew 4, but 2 other cool abilities: Void Shields, protection from mana value 3 or less, that's kind of neat, and Gatling Blaster. Whenever Reaver Titan attacks, it deals 5 damage to each opponent. Ooh la la. Alright, this card's really expensive. So 7 mana, it needs to do something like so impactful that it's worthy of like your 1 or 2 7-drop slots too. I don't think this is it. Like, it's fine. It gets around, it can't be blocked by tokens or whatever, small creatures. So it has pseudo vigilance. It hits somebody for 10. It has crew 4, which is not the worst. And it basically nets you an additional 15 damage. If you have 3 opponents, it deals 5 to each person's face. That's 15 damage. That's really nice. If you had a way to give it an effect, that would be even nastier. But yeah, unless this deck has a lot of ways of just, putting this onto the battlefield for not 7 mana, I wouldn't be like super thrilled with it. I guess it's fine in Greasefang decks because you can reanimate it. So this is a nice top-end flashy vehicle that you can reanimate in Greasefang. And in the context of these precons, obviously, just like any big 7-drop is going to be, if it's impactful enough, it's going to win you the game. So it should be able to do enough in the precon deck, but yeah. I don't know. I think it's probably good enough in Greasefang, actually. Moving on, we have Knight Paladin. This is a 5-mana, 6/6 artifact vehicle, trample, with rapid fire battle cannon. When it enters the battlefield, it deals 4 damage to each opponent. So just ETB, boom, net you 12 damage, essentially. If you have 3 opponents, 4 each, that's nice. And it only has crew 1. Crew 1 for a 6/6 trampler is pretty solid. So you just need like 1 random 2/2 or whatever, or like a utility creature to crew it. Is it great outside of the context of this deck? Probably not. I don't know. But in the precon, I mean, this is a good threat. Like, a lot of our creatures we were looking at are small, and they will struggle to attack eventually. So just having additional ways of having reach, ETB, damage, and just 6/6 tramplers, that's good. That's solid. Next up, we got Inquisitorial Rosette. It's a 2-mana artifact equipment with Inquisition Agents. Whenever a quick creature attacks, create a 2/2 white Astartes Warrior creature token with Vigilance as attacking. Then attacking creatures gain Menace until end of turn, equip 3. Kind of overcosted. It doesn't boost your creature that is equipped at all. It just makes a token and gives out all your stuff Menace. Not great. I don't know. This is fine, but not really exciting to me. Moving on. We have Primaris Chaplain. This is a 4-mana Orzhov 3/3 creature Astartes Cleric with Battle Cry. So whenever this creature attacks, each other attacking creature gets +1/+0 until end of turn. And Rosarius. Whenever it attacks, it gains Indestructible until end of turn. So this is a great way to just push extra damage through. It's an anthem for your go-wide creatures, and Rosarius makes sure that it's not going to be dying because it's just a 3/3. It's not going to be dying in the process too, so you can continually attack with it and keep giving your creatures that anthem. So it's attacking, and it's dealing 3 damage by itself. It's pumping up your team. It's indestructible. Yeah, this is a solid card. Moving on, though, we have The Flesh is Weak. That's a sweet name. This is a 5-mana Esper enchantment, and it says, when it enters the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. Creatures you control with +1/+1 counters on them are artifacts in addition to their other types, and non-artifact creatures get -1/-1. So this basically nets you, it's like almost giving your all your creatures +2/+2, but it's way better than that, because it's giving your other creatures -1/-1. The only problem here, though, is that your other creatures are not artifacts. Like, most of your creatures aren't artifacts. I think we saw like 2 creatures that were not artifacts. So yeah, this is really good. Once you have a board state of creatures, it's a nice pump effect. But then when you play any subsequent creatures after the Flesh of Weak is on the battlefield, it's actually going to hurt you a lot, because then your other creatures are going to be getting -1/-1 on them. Unless you have ways of putting additional +1/+1 counters on them. But we didn't see that many ways of doing that in this deck. So, I don't know. I'm not really... This seems like a bad enchantment in the deck, actually. And then... I don't know. This... Yeah, am I missing something here? I'm probably missing something here. It's probably a good card in the deck, maybe with the reprints or something like that. But in a vacuum, looking at the rest of the cards we just looked at, it doesn't seem that good. I don't know. Let me know in the comment section. Moving on, though, we got Epistolary Librarian. I definitely got that wrong. It's a 4-mana Azorius 3/4 creature Astartes wizard. Ooh, wizard. Veil of Time. Whenever it attacks, you may cast a spell with mana value X or less from your hand without paying its mana cost, where X is a number of attacking creatures. Ooh. So in a go-wide deck like this one, you're basically going to be able to cast, like, most of the spells in your hand for free. So this is a great, like, weird ramp card. Obviously, it requires its attack, and there's not a lot of haste enablers in the deck. And also, it's a 3/4, so it's most often going to be kind of risky to attack sometimes. But it is a cool, interesting, unique, go-wide ramp effect in the deck. So it's cool. I also like it's a Astartes wizard, and I like wizards. The art is neat. Is it good? I don't know. It's fine. All right, moving on, though. We got Deny the Witch. This is an Esper instant, 4-mana instant that says counter target spell, activated ability, or triggered ability. Its controller loses life equal to the number of creatures you control. So this is 4-mana, super flexible counter spell. It's a counter spell or a stifle effect, depending on what you need. In the context of this deck, it's very good. Obviously, this is go wide, so it's going to make the controller lose a lot of life if you have just a lot of creatures sitting on the battlefield. And it's very flexible. It's going to counter anything you need, really. 4 mana is a lot outside of the context of this deck, however, so it's not great outside the precon, but in the precon, it's great. It's solid. Next, we have Cybernetica Datasmith. This is a 3-mana Dimir 0/1 artifact creature human artificer, and it has protection from robots and field reprogramming. You can pay 1 blue and tap it. Target player draws a card. Another target player creates a 4/4 colorless robot artifact creature token with this creature can't block. So this is another political one. Probably you're going to be targeting yourself to draw a card, and you're going to give somebody a 4/4 robot artifact creature token. Probably you're going to tell that person, like, hey, who wants to be my buddy who wants to have an artifact creature token, or who wants to be my buddy who wants to draw a card while I make a 4/4 creature. Either way, you can use this politically, and also it has protection for robots, so if that token you give to somebody goes swinging at you, you have a 0/1 blocker for it, so that's decent. It's not great, but it's a fun little political card, and tokens are kind of like the theme of the deck too, so yeah, it's solid. It survives their flesh is weak. That's neat. Moving on, though, we have the final new card from the deck. This is Company Commander. This is a 4-mana Orzhov 2/4 creature human soldier with 2 abilities. First is Command Section. When it enters the battlefield, create a number of 1/1 white soldier creature tokens equal to the number of opponents you have, so typically 3, and then bring it down. Whenever it attacks, creatures you control gain Death Touch until end of turn. So this is like a pseudo evasion effect. Your opponents don't really want to be trading their bigger creatures, more important creatures for your just 1/1 tokens. So that's a great way of just kind of shoving some damage through or making combat a pain for your opponents. And an ETB trigger for 4 mana, make 3 tokens is pretty solid. Yeah, this card it's a good card in the precon. It's very solid. And with that, we finally go through all the new cards from all 4 of the Warhammer pre-constructed decks. That was a pretty thorough breakdown of each card. I hope you enjoyed it. I tried to stay away from bringing other cards and other combos outside of the pre-constructed deck in this video. I know I got some feedback before that people were like, don't talk about other cards, talk about just the precon cards too. So I tried to focus a lot more in this video on just the precon cards and nothing else in the context of the decks, because yeah, I understand like the Warhammer 40k cards, people are probably going to buy them and play the decks against each other and keep the flavor of them all intact. Like once you start adding outside cards to it, then it's no longer a fully Warhammer deck. I get that. So hopefully you enjoyed all this stuff. So like and subscribe if you like this sort of content. We're going to have one more Warhammer video coming out, probably a Commander Clash podcast, where we're going to be discussing our favorite cards from the pre-constructed decks in the context outside of them. So like what cards in the pre-constructed decks that are new would we like to add to non-Warhammer Commander decks, like just add them to our own personal paper decks or whatever. What's the most exciting in the Commander format as a whole? So if you're interested in seeing what new cards to pick up as singles to just add to other decks outside of the pre-con, check that out soon. It will probably come out in like a week from now on the podcast. And yeah, there's going to be more Commander content coming out. So just like and subscribe and all that good stuff. And until next time, friends, see ya. Ooh, I'm tired. Bye.